This latest fraud involves over $1 billion taken from the Australian Taxation Office. I'm going to talk you through what it is, how it works, and the most juicy revelation that's just come to light with regards to this fraud. So make sure you stay tuned to the end where I'll be revealing that to you. Quick disclaimer, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. I'm not a licensed tax advisor. I'm Tomo from Tomo Finance. And the goal of my YouTube channel is to really be able to explain financial concepts in a very easy and straightforward way to understand that the everyday person can understand. So the goal of this video is just purely for entertainment purposes. So keep that in mind tonight. If you've got any questions when we're going through, shoot them through to the chat. If you're writing on the replay and you've got any questions, leave me a comment as well and I'll definitely get back to you. Back in 2020, there started a social media scam, and it started on TikTok, okay? And this scam was spread through TikTok, people sharing it and explaining what to do. So it started in 2020, so it's a couple of years old. There's been a few changes, a few revelations since then, but it is quite an old scam. And each of the claimants, in some instances, were able to take out $100,000 per instance. So it was quite a big scam. So this is where it started. I'm going to explain how it works, but it started back in 2022. So on the next slide here, you see I've got this lovely graph that I've made. So this fraud relates to GST and the fraudulent claims of GST. So GST stands for Goods and Services Tax. In other countries, it's called VAT or sales tax, and it's basically a tax on goods and services. So I've made this lovely, well, what I think is a lovely picture here to explain how GST works. So you'll see there's some orange businesses on the sides here. We've got this lovely stream of water going through the middle. And that's because in Australia, generally speaking, GST is not a cost worn by Australian businesses. It generally flows through Australian businesses, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. So if we have our first business there on the top of the rocks, and say that business has a $100 expense, okay, and that's excluding GST, then you got to add GST to that, so you add $10. So the cash that a business has to pay is $110. That's the cash outlay for this business expense. So they've paid $110 out. A business that is registered for GST can then claim that $10 GST back in its what's called a BAS, or a business activity statement. It can claim that back. So if it's outlaid $110, it can claim $10 back. So the net cost for this business is back to the original $100. So GST is, generally speaking, not a cost worn by Australian businesses that are registered. It flows through, if you could picture it flowing through like a stream, and then it ends up somewhere. And where it ends up is generally end consumers. People like me and you. So people who are not registered for GST, people who are not carrying on a business. These are the people who generally wear the cost of GST, who are not registered. So in this instance, we've got our end consumer here, not carrying on a business, not registered for GST. They go to the shops, pay $100 for their shopping bills, $100. They've got to add GST to that. So it's $110. So their cash outlay is $110. If they're not registered for GST, they can't claim that $10 back, which is different to the scenario of the GST registered business who can claim that $10 back. The individual and consumer cannot claim that $100 GST back. That's a crucial point here. So the cost of GST in Australia, generally speaking, is worn by the end consumer. Okay, so what this scam involved was end consumers, people like me and you, that have been advised on social media to create a fake ABN, which stands for an Australian business number, and create a fake GST registration, and then start lodging BASs. Okay, start lodging BASs. So here you'd have people that were applying for an Australian business number. They were then lodging a BAS on a made-up business, okay? And when businesses start up, they generally have lots of costs that they incur. They have lots of costs in starting up. If you're a tradesperson, maybe you've got to buy a ute, maybe you've got to buy tools. You know, if you're a hairdresser, you've got to buy a station, you've got to buy scissors, you've got to buy chairs. So there's lots of costs that starting up a business. And when you're starting up a business, you can then possibly claim that GST back. And so that's what these people were doing. They were creating fraudulent ABNs and claiming fraudulent BAZs. And in some cases, they were getting $50,000 back in return from these fake BAZs. So this was advised from TikTok, social media. So tip number one, do not take any financial advice from someone on social media. Do not take financial advice from me, some random YouTube guy. Definitely do not take advice from people on TikTok. Okay, so that's how the scam worked. People registering for GST and then creating false ABNs and then lodging these fake BAZs to get a GST return. So now, there's a clip here I want to show you. There's a clip here that I'm going to show you guys.
The Australian Taxation Office is under scrutiny for paying out more than $1.2 billion in fake GST claims to scammers on social media. Here's reporter Dougal Beattie.
The ATO is blaming influencers on TikTok for promoting the scam that netted at least $1.2 billion in fake GST claims. The tax fraud went viral in mid-2021, and here's how it worked. Thousands of scammers or their victims would apply for an Australian business number and register a fictitious business via their MyGov. They would then submit a fake business activity statement claiming they'd spent a huge amount of money to set up the company, then would immediately apply for a 10% GST refund from the tax office.
Crazy, right? So there was up to about 57,000 perpetrators, 57,000 people that have done this scam, and you've seen that the money that's been taken is over $1 billion. It's absolutely crazy, but massive but. It gets worse. It gets worse. The latest juicy revelation, I'll show you another clip right now, and then we'll discuss that. So the latest juicy revelation that's just come out in the last couple of days.
More than 150 tax office staff are being investigated over a TikTok tax fraud scheme.
Strange one, huh? For more on this extraordinary story, let's bring in John Keogh, economics editor at the Australian Financial Review. Johnny, good morning to you. Have tax office staff really committed tax fraud here?
Yeah, good morning, Carl and Sarah. Look, this is almost unbelievable until you read about it in the Auditor General's report. So tax office officials actually implicated in this TikTok GST fraud. It's a $2 billion fraud against the Australian public. Now, there's been 57,000 alleged perpetrators out there in the broader community, and it's now come to light that at least 150 of them were tax office representatives. So far, 12 have either been terminated or are facing criminal prosecution. I should point out the tax office says...
That's crazy. That's crazy. So the latest revelation is that as part of this scam, there have been at least 150 current, former Australian Tax Office staff, contractors that were possibly involved in this scam. Now, the tax office has said that some of these people's, some of their identities were stolen. At least 12 of them have been terminated and are facing criminal charges. But the fact that this GST scam, the Australian Tax Office is responsible for collecting GST and ensuring that they're collecting taxes efficiently, and then for 150 people to at least be accused, 12 to be dismissed or under criminal prosecution that have actually been participants in this scam is absolutely nuts, absolutely crazy. Really, really bad look for the tax office. I hope they can get to the bottom of this, but absolutely crazy. I'm sure you'll agree. So leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this. I've got some other video on really good investing content. So before you leave, I've got a comment here from JT. Identity stolen. Haha, seems convenient. Thanks, JT. Yeah, it seems a little bit almost too good to be true, doesn't it? That their identities have been stolen. So thanks for the comment there, JT. Before you go, I've got another video here that you should click on to watch. If you're watching this on the replay, let me know what you think about this scam. Let me know if you've been involved in any scams that have affected you, and I'll happily do a video on it. I hope you found this educational. I hope you enjoyed this, and all the best. Good luck with your wealth journey. Take care.